Hey everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be the patch 8.9 notes rundown. So without saying anything else, let's get right into it. Mage changes. Mages pretty much have two mana states, pre-mana purchase and post-mana purchase. On their first trip to lane, mages have to be very careful. Okay, so let's see what the changes are. Base mana regen no longer gives base mana regen. Manpire no longer returns mana on minion kill. Now gives 5 mana regen per 5 seconds. Wait, this ends up being better, right? Ends up being better. Even if you last hit perfectly. Now gives plus 5 damage on hit damage versus minions. That's really nice. That's a cheeky little buff. I actually really like that. That's pretty cool. Lost Chapter. Cost and ability power increased 1100 to 1300 gold. That's actually really, really brutal. Especially because the components that, well, the ability power going up to 40, but the problem is that you're going to be sitting on an Amp Tome and a Sapphire Crystal, which is not a lot of combat stats. So it seems to me like the initial buy will be Amp Tome, Sapphire, Boots, which is pretty awkward. The first thing that stands out to me about this, however, is that it buffs champions that don't have a reliance on Lost Chapter. It's a buff to tier champions, I guess, in a way, because of the way that they can play out the laning phase, although I apparently see that Tear of the Goddess below is going to get a change, so I'll re-comment on that. Right off the bat, though, I immediately think of Victor, because now his Hex Core is not completely ridiculous, considering that it's going to be a lot harder for opponents to pressure his mana in the early laning phases if he doesn't get the 537 or the 530 CSing recall off or whatever. Then it becomes increasingly more difficult for... it used to be increasingly more difficult for him to lane against the opponent if they had the Lost Chapter or if they had the tier. So it's an indirect buff to Victor. Tear of the Goddess. Total cost increase, mana refund decrease. Max mana increase now increases current mana by current percentage of mana. Okay, cost 750 to 850. Mana cost to refund. So this is really interesting. So both Lost Chapter and Tear of the Goddess both just got hit. I would say that this is less significant than this. But when you think about how some of the tier users come into the lane and they spam it and they get the recall off, it's often very oppressive. And if you don't have teleport and you're being forced to use your mana pool, it can end up resulting in them getting a recall off, coming back to the lane, maybe missing one or two minions, but then having lane control and priority on you because they have the tier, which turns into HP in a way. It turns into extra damage, extra spell cast that you can't really keep up with. And so they have that going for them. I do think that this nerf or this change is less significant than this change. This is a really, really big change. So, okay. Extract GLP 800. Combined cost decrease, mana increase, slow duration increase, mission speed increase. Alright, so everything's increased. And you know what has not increased is my desire to build this item. So, Fiendish Codex. Ability power increased. 30 to 35. It's not really going to do anything. 5 ability power is actually really nice, though. I have felt like a really long time mages have lost some of the damage. And for that, I mean, I'm really happy to see that some damage is being added back. And then obviously with the change that Deathcap received a while ago, every little bit of power ends up counting. Okay, Twin Shadows. Ability power increase 60 to 70. That's kind of nice. It's a very, very, very rare item to see. So, but nice little buff. Seeker's Arm Guard. Total cost decreased 1200 to 1100. This is actually fantastic. These are two changes that directly help out Fizz. This is a champion that I think of. Another is obviously Kassadin. Kassadin also likes the Tear of the Goddess change, and we do know that a certain someone is doing very successful with Kassadin on the Chinese ladder. And sometimes people do pick him inside of solo queue, and he's always going to be a champion that you have to keep in mind when looking at mage changes and itemization changes, because he's a champion that often ebbs and flows with meta changes and shifts. So all these are really, really nice. I like the direction of all the changes so far. Spellbinder. Base ability power increased. Ability power from activation decreased. Combined cost and total increased. Okay, so total cost goes up by 100. That's really not going to do anything because I don't think anyone's rushing this item, so 100 gold for a second, third, or fourth item is not going to be that problematic. Combined cost obviously goes up. Ability power greatly take 20 ability power for 100 gold increase. Ability power max on activate. Oh, okay. Movement speed max on activation 30 to 50%. This is okay. So this is sort of like a novelty buff. I don't think it's that big, but that's all fine. Riley's Crystal Scepter 85 to 90. So another 5 ability power. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more there, but whatever. We can take what we can get. Mage Soul Steery Glory Stacks required for bonus movement speed decrease 15 to 10. It's still just going to be a win more item, or it's going to be a way to add salt to the wound. This isn't going to make it an item that you consider actually building. Luden's Echo, total cost decreased, mana increased, 3,300 to 3,200. Mana goes from 500 to 600. I like this. I think this is all really, really good. I also like this change right here. I like this quite a lot. All right, so nice little buff again to another mage item. Turrets. Damage to turrets on basic attacks from ability power increased and converted to magic damage. That's really nice. Taking turrets is an important mechanic in the game, and mages often get left out of that. Currently, champions who build more ability power than attack damage hit some percent of their ability power is additional magic damage, and the attack power up in that ratio, and also converting their whole attack to magic damage, not just the bonus damage. So this is like really big for like Twisted Fate and obviously AP split pushers. AP damage to conversion 50 to 60% of a basic attack use ability power bonus to turrets. The whole attack will convert to magic damage. I'm wondering what the changes for. I've already brought up Kassadin, but I mean I'll bring him up again here because he's obviously one of the main split push AP champions that does exist inside of the game. Obviously another one would be Teemo if he does end up building AP. These changes are really, really nice there. I think this is actually really good for like Orianna in mid lane. Another champion that comes to mind is like Ryze. These are champions that do have the ability to auto-attack turrets, especially if they get a really hard shove in on you, you're forced to recall, and they're just sitting in mid lane without really anything to do. Twisted Fate, another champion that comes to mind immediately when thinking about a change like this. Ziggs is another champion that obviously comes in to play with this. So really like the turret change here. I really like the love that a lot of the mages seem to be getting. Okay, champions. 25 mages have more mana regen and base mana, but less mana growth. 5 mages have more mana regen. All right, so let's take a look. Ahri. Okay, well, Annie doesn't actually use mana, so that's fine. I'm just gonna browse this really quick. I'm assuming that. See, this is one of the problems. This is where I feel like Freak is really good, talking about stuff like this. I don't think that this affects competitive all that much. I'm actually not entirely sure on the exact math, because this is my first glance at everything. So I don't know what it does by certain levels or whatever. This is fine. Click to expand. Diana. I will comment on this because it is so short. This seems like it's really, really big. The Morgana and the Kayle and the Galio seem really big. This champion is atrocious, and this one, well, I mean, kind of gives them an extra blinding dart in lane. This is okay. I mean, these 4, great. This, terrible. Champions. Amumu. Q mana cost decrease. Q bandage toss 80 to 120 scaling to 50 to 70. That's actually really nice. If maybe he got a little bit more love in either his base stats or maybe if something happened with his W or his E or maybe even his R or something, it could actually really help out with Amumu. I really like the direction that they're going. I think this is a fantastic buff to, you know, the sad mummy. So pretty much it. Caitlyn, passive can no longer crit and now simply has a percentage increase over damage dealt to champions. Damage to champions plus 50%, modified by a critical strike, total attack, okay? Dr. Mundo, our healing increased. Sadism, 40 to 60 scaling to 50 to 100% max health. Alright. Okay, Mid-Mundo. Mid-Mundo, maybe Jungle Mundo. The problem with Jungle Mundo right now, though, is some of his matchups would be really, really bad. And then also some of the matchups that he would find himself having for 2v2s and mid and top lane are also going to be unfortunate for him and his ally. With that being said, though, Banner of Command obviously still a meta choice, and with these kind of buffs, I could definitely see him being picked in very specific situations as a very niche answer to certain team compositions and stuff. I do not think that this means go out of your way, pick Mundo mid-top jungle support, and no, that is not what I mean. Okay. Garen, Q base damage increased at later ranks, W resistance increased. That's really good. Base damage, decisive strike, 30 to 130 scaling, but it's getting 10 damage per point in it, and that's actually really good because you end up maxing Q first. So basically, this is the one that I really like to look at first. This is also one that we can look at too in some matchups. He might end up hitting this 2 times if you're lucky. So we're looking at 20 extra damage by level 3. And then this is the really big one, because this one can add up to something like 60 or 80 just with rank 3 being added in. So we're looking at Garen potentially being able to add something like 60 to 100 damage in his laning phase, realistically. And that's pretty much it. So anyways, W Courage, maximum resistances 30 to 40. I think that's fantastic. So all the changes that Garen can get in buffs are greatly welcome. I do think that he needs some kind of a change that would help him maybe gap close. His Q does not feel like it's enough. Maybe if like he gained increased movement speed when running at the villain or something. Maybe something as small as that would actually be impactful enough to help him get back in. Or if he could choose who the villain would be after a certain amount of time or something. I don't know. It just feels like he's still very lackluster. Aurelia, passive now refresher. This champion is insane, by the way. I'm just throwing that out there. I really, really hope that we get to see a lot of Aurelia in coming months, because she is so fun to watch and she's just absolutely bonkers. I also do think that this is a champion that can definitely be played in mid lane, not just top lane. So keep that in mind. Ivern, passive health cost decrease, passive duration time decrease at later ranks, Q missile width increase. So passive, friend of the forest, 25% of maximum mana, 22.5. And then his passive on taking the camp, 40 to 60 scaling to 40 to 30 at 1 through 6, 27 to 15. These are nice little buffs. The root collar buff, I mean, this isn't what's making Ivern bad, but we'll take it. Ivern's having a lot of other problems right now inside of the jungle. That it has to do with itemization changes that have occurred, the rune changes. Ivern doesn't really feel like he has a very good rune. And then also Ivern is semi-dependent on the meta because of the previous things that we just mentioned, him having problems with that occurred over the last half year or so. So Ivern's not going to return to the heyday, or he's not going to return to his prime like he was last year, but these changes are definitely welcome. So Kai'Sa, evolve Q missile count decreased. Missile damage is now flagged as area effect. E duration decreased. Okay, so nerfs all around. After having seen her a bit more, I think that these are completely fine and balanced, so I'm not really going to complain. Kassadin, Q magic damage shield strength increased. Null sphere 40 to 160 to 60 to 160. So early game, this is actually really big. So he gets 2? Wait, this is weird scaling. What? So he gets 20 at rank 1, which is really big because this is effectively 40 HP. If the Kassadin player is actually good. So he's getting 40 extra HP in the trades. Later on, he could end up getting something unholy like 100 damage blocked. That's really big. You have to really understand what that means for Kassadin. So the changes that we mentioned above, plus this Q null sphere, definitely helps out his laning phase, helps out his late game a little bit. And then, yeah. Kennen, W 5th hit base damage and bonus attack damage ratio increased at later ranks. Ability power ratio decreased. W active base damage decreased. Ability power ratio increased. Kennen now loses E defenses but gains attack speed upon exiting lightning form. Okay. So, W electrical surge 15 to 35 to 10 to 50. 5th attack damage ratio 80, 60% bonus attack damage. What? Where does this buff come from? Like, sometimes, you know, I just have to throw it out there sometimes. You know, sometimes you open up a patch notes and you see Volibear getting nerfed, right? And then sometimes you open up patch notes and you get 0.25. And then sometimes you just open up patch notes and you know what? You're like, well, fuck it. You know what? Kennen. Alright. I mean, that's cool. Alright. Fnatic paid ride. Fnatic has deeper pockets than Steve, apparently. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but okay. Yeah, we're not even gonna comment on this. So, to be honest, I don't think that it affects low MMR. I don't think it affects mid MMR. I don't even think that it affects high MMR. And the reason that I say that is because Kennen is a pretty difficult champion to balance. Even when Kennen was in his prime, at AD and top lane, he wasn't really finding a lot of success, especially inside of solo queue in Western regions. And then even some players would find themselves having a lot of difficulty actually utilizing and taking advantage of all the power that he could offer in some matchups. So in that regard, in solo queue, I don't think that it's that big. However, competitive, I think these changes are Zoe level. These are 0.25, and I don't know what's going on here, but this is really strange. Leona, W base damage increased, so 40 to 200 scaling to 60 to 220, so she gets an extra of 40 damage or something in laning phase, maybe 60. I mean, Leona was in a really, really good spot a few months ago, and then they just changed her, and I think that this type of buff is not really going to impact or magically make her come back. Obviously, it helps out her kill potential, but realistically, that's all that you're looking at. You're looking at an ADC getting an extra auto attack in, and that's not going to change the laning phase, because it's such an inconsistent ability, and it also has other variables that have to occur in order for you to be able to make use of these damage increases. Yeah. Lux, Q base damage increased and cooldown decreased. W shield now doubles on return, even if it hadn't hit an ally on the way out. E missile speed, radius, and monocost decreased. E cooldown at later ranks decreased. Okay, so base stats, attack speed 0. Okay, health growth. Oh, she loses some health. Okay, well that's okay. Is that like half a ruby crystal? Q light binding. Base damage is up at early ranks, and this is really good because you only put 1 point in it. So she's getting an extra 20 damage added, which is fine. Cooldown is at 10 seconds, and this is fantastic because, again, you normally only put 1 point in it, I believe, and obviously this is having 1 second shaved off, which now greatly impacts her 40 or 45% CDR. Super, super, super big buffs. Cost 50 to 70 scaling to 40 to 60 scaling. Absolutely fantastic. Prismatic Barrier, okay, this is really, really good. Lucian Singularity, 1300. All right, this is fine. Losing 100 speed on the missile, that's fine. Radius down by 40. Good players are still going to hit it. Cost 70 to 130 to 70 to 110, much more manageable. 2 seconds shaved off at max rank. This doesn't mean anything compared to this right here and this right here. Because Lux is a champion that scales with CDR. And if you don't totally know what I mean by that, I mean if she can get more CDR and just keep throwing out her AoE abilities, she'll deal more damage than if she just packs a big wallop inside of one hit without a lot of CDR. She becomes increasingly more obnoxious, increasingly more difficult to hold down. It becomes even more difficult to, take down her ally champions if she's nearby. If she has the barrier up, she becomes a siege monster. Everything gets increasingly more scary, especially if she has like blue buff or if she has a lot of mono regeneration, and she finally hits her CDR cap. So, really, really like these Lux changes. Ramus, W armor bonus increase, 20 to 30. That's okay. Poppy, base movement speed decreased, W movement speed and resistance decreased, passive and E range increased, snapcast R now knocks up for a low duration, no longer makes enemies untargetable, change R missile speed. Wait, hold on. So, she gets 50 range here, loses MS, loses base resistance, loses movement speed, loses resistances here, loses heroic... Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Max, she got 50 range on heroic charge. Our Keeper's Verdict. This is, like, I don't know how we get Poppy and Kennen in the same patch. I just, like, who lost to Poppy? This is like Volibear level. Who lost to Poppy?
Some Camille main at Riot.
Some Camille main lost to Poppy. Someone went to jump on her and she like cast the little circle thing.
Yeah.
And that person like slammed their mouse. They're like, not today. I'll see you next week. They put these changes in. But it's alright though, because she got 50 range on Heroic Charge. So she's going the distance.
Perfect.
You know? She's going the difference. Shyvana. In our ability power... Oh, yeah, that matters. Great. Sona, base attack damage increased. Power core damage increased. In before 5 damage, lol. I'm glad that they addressed it, because I feel like a lot of people would say that. She does spam her power chord throughout laning phase. So this is not just 5 damage. It's a significant amount of damage, as long as the Sona's actually utilizing it. Now, I will say 5 damage lol, however, due to the fact that the people that are playing Sona, with the exception of the few Sona mains at high MMR and maybe like Stuntopolis and NA, will be standing approximately about 600 range behind you, and you may actually wonder if they're an aim PC half the time. So I do have to say that, though. In that regard, 5 damage lol. Syndra, Q Transcendent bonus damage is now bonus damage to champions, no longer sphere duration. That's fantastic. Dark Sphere lasts 2 additional seconds. Dark Sphere deals 15% damage to champions. That's a really, really good Syndra buff. That's pretty much... Oh, Snapcast no longer makes enemies on target. I mean, that doesn't matter. It's not a verdict. Alright. Noxian Diplomacy... Oh! That's really weird, because I felt like, you know, that didn't hit me, but it did sometimes. And now it's great to know that apparently it's even longer than what it was supposed to be. That's really cool. Warwick, base attack damage decrease, Q damage decrease at later ranks. This is another out-of-the-blue nerf. Was he ever picked in LCK or China? Was Warwick ever picked?
He was picked in one region, I think.
Huh?
I think he was picked in a region. I think Warwick was picked.
Yeah, go ahead and tell me Omar got in NA Academy.
Oh, I think, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's... All right, great. I wonder how I guessed that.
Oh.
All right.
How did you?
Yeah, how did I do that? Yep. All right. Ziggs. E-base damage increased at later ranks. So we talked about earlier, a lot of the changes for the mages were really good. And now we're seeing Ziggs get another buff. This is a champion that I think has a lot of potential. I really, really do. I think that he's undervalued, and he's under-researched as to how he can actually fit into the meta and how he can be utilized. You know, some people credit him as actually being hard at the highest levels, but I think he's a champion that should probably get some love, and I can foresee him just sort of gradually slipping into the meta if someone actually that was really proficient at him took the time to make him come into competitive play. But outside of that, I mean, these changes are obviously good. They're welcome, but it's not changing his current state. Fixed a bug where Rage Blade interacted with other bonus attack damage granting effects to grant more attack damage than intended, looking at Eugen, but also Infernal Drake and Master Yi. Okay. Epic Monsters, Baron Nashor, base damage decrease, base health increase, corruption damage increase. This is really good, so it makes it harder to take Baron, I guess, which is always welcome. Baron should feel more like a raid boss than it currently does. Summon Rift Herald, takes less damage from charging, does more damage to towers with charge, takes more damage from eye pokes. This is all really good. Okay, I like these changes. I like that Rift Herald, which should be a contested neutral objective in the early and mid portion of the game, is... You know, they're giving incentives or more incentive to try to capture it. I like the change to Baron too, to slow down the game. Runes, Unsealed Spellbook. Unsealed Spellbook is now a completely different keystone. That's great. Swap one of your equipped summoner spells to a new single-use summoner spell. After the single-use summoner spell, your original summoner spell will swap back in. I like that. I like that change. Bug fixes. Upcoming skins. That is adorable. That is actually adorable. That is fantastic. Okay, and I guess that's it? Are there any other changes? Did I miss anything? Or maybe the other stuff was 8.10 or something. So let's recap really quick. Okay? Darn's Ring change, good. Lost Chapter change, really, really good for some champions, really bad for others. Should be self-explanatory. Tear of the Goddess change, balanced. I think that it's completely fair. The real winner here is Victor, because Hexcore is not on this list, but, you know, it did get buffed. Well, indirect buff, given the fact that the two other rivals of it got nerfed. Hextech GLP, still garbage. Fiendish Codex, good. Twin Shadows, good. Seeker's Armguard, fantastic. Spellbinder, good. Riley's Crystal Scepter, good. Magi Soulstare, doesn't matter. Placebo, well, not a placebo, no one's building it anyway. Luden's Echo, good. Turret change, fantastic. Mage change, champion stuff here. Check out Freak's Rundown. I assume that he will cover that really in detail, much more so than I would do here. Diana still sucks. Galio, Kale, Morgana, Teemo, really big winners there. Amumu change, I think it's really, really good in the right direction. Still think that Amumu is really good at lower MMR, and I think that he's a champion that you should pick up at lower MMR, but I don't think that he belongs in competitive play, and yes, I understand that MVP Beyond picks him sometimes. Caitlyn change, okay. Dr. Mundo, maybe he gets shown mid lane, maybe he comes in as a comp-specific, counter pick. That's pretty much it. Garen, not the type of changes that are going to propel him into competitive or make him a viable pick in high MMR. Aurelia, great. Ivern, not the type of changes, again, very similar to Garen. It's not exactly what he needs. Kai'Sa, balance. Kassadin, really, really big buffs for Kassadin throughout this patch. Kennen, 0.25. Leona, it doesn't actually do anything. Lux changes, I think the Lux changes are all in a really, really good direction. Ramus, okay. Poppy, Volibear. Shyvana, no one cares. Sona, it is a big change for high MMR players that will utilize it. It's not going to make her come into competitive. It's just not. Syndra change, really like that. Talon change, really good. Warwick change, I think it's a joke. Ziggs I already talked about. And then everything else is all fine. So, that was pretty much it. And I hope you enjoyed the rundown. I think 8.10 is the next major patch. And we'll see what that ends up bringing to us. I've heard a lot of rumors, I guess, from people whenever I've streamed about what's supposed to happen, but obviously I don't look at it until it goes live, so really looking forward to that patch.